Kal Kadosh, Boker Or. I wanted to share with you a beautiful Dvar Torah on this week's parasha, Parashat Devarim. And listen very, very carefully. Yeah, basically like this. We have Vateragenu Be'aolehem. In this week's parasha, Moshe Rabbeinu is going to pass away. And when he passes away, what happens is right before he's going to give them rebuke, he's going to give them musar. Why? He wants that they should remember something. And many times when a person's on the way out, he could give them a few words of encouragement and of constructive criticism, and they're going to listen. But listen to what Moshe Rabbeinu tells them. Vateragenu be'aolechem vatomenu. You guys were slandering, saying lashon hara, grumbling in your tents, and you were saying, Besinat Hashem otanu, that since God hated us, He took us out of the land of Mitzrayim to give us to the hands of the Ammoni to destroy us. That's in Devarim Aleph, Pasuk Kav Zayin, right? Pasuk 27. What exactly is going on exactly? What does that mean that we were speaking slander? So just for to start always with a nice Milta de Vedichuta, a good story, right? There was something that happened. There was a Chassid. His name was Rabbi Mendel Hotroth. And this Rabbi Mendel, he was actually during the time of, right? He was during the time of when the Russians were coming, and anybody that went against the state, they would send them to Siberia. You wouldn't even, there was nothing what to do. So what happened was that he was in one of these camps, and every single day they would work and work and work, and he used to finish work at 5 o'clock, but there was still another hour or two until nighttime, until going to sleep. So they used to do different things in order to just waste the time. So there were people that they would play cards. Now, according to the camp rules, you weren't allowed to play cards. So what happened? They would come and they would start playing cards, and always the guards would always be on guard to make sure that there's no cards. So they hear everybody laughing, and the guards obviously know, I got them. He runs inside. Give me the cards. What cards? What cards? No cards. Okay. He leaves. This time the guard is a little bit smarter. And he comes and he thinks, you know what? I'm going to wait right here outside. I'm just waiting. Waits 5, 10, 20 minutes. Again, all of a sudden, they start hearing all this. He starts hearing all the laughing and the this and that. Again, all of a sudden, boom, he barges in. Give me the cards. Oh, there's no cards. What do you thought? He lines everybody up and he starts checking them. Head to toe, starts checking them. One by one, he comes, he throws everything over. Nothing, no cards. So, okay, comes and he says, there's no cards. Okay, what am I going to do? He leaves. The next day, Rabbi Mendel comes and he asks the head of the guys there. He tells him, tell me something. The police, this guy, this officer, he came in and he checked every single person head to toe. He checked every common space, everything. Where in the world do you guys hide the cards? Where did you hide the cards? He went and he said like this. He says, you should know, one of us here is a professional pickpocketer. So therefore, what we do is that when the guard comes in, without the guard realizing, he comes and he slips the cards in his pocket. And then he comes and he starts checking every single person. Right before the guard is going to leave and he realizes that there's no cards, the pickpocketer goes and he takes it back. And then the game continues. Meaning, the last place where the guard is ever going to dream of checking is in his own pockets. And therefore, that's why we're able to get away with it. Rabbi Mendel came and he said, I learned from here an important lesson. You know what the important lesson is? The important lesson is we always know how to find faults in everybody except for within ourselves. We're always able to find other things, but not in ourselves. Parashat Devarim starts with the Tochacha of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it starts when Moshe Rabbeinu is going to come and he's going to say different things what Bnei Yisrael did. And Rashi says, what is the Lashon of a tiragenu be'aolem? You guys were dealing in your tents. Slander. Lashon hara. You guys were saying Lashon hara. And Rashi says that the chet of narganut is Lashon hara. Because he brings a pasuk, Tivrei, nargan ki mitzlamim vehem yadu chadre baten. The words of a querulous man are bruising. They penetrate the most inmost parts. So what exactly is an argan? The Ralbag says It's a person that he comes and he complains for nothing. There are certain people that they always make themselves feel the victims by other people. And Be'emet, it's very difficult because you're not actually doing anything bad, but they always make themselves into a victim. And therefore they come and they start saying negative things to destroy the atmosphere, to bring about a very cloudy atmosphere. Everyone's down. Rav Nebenzahl comes and he explains, that's the kavanah of the Lashon Hara that we're talking about that is so difficult. He says, why? What is an argan? He says, an argan is somebody that they do him a favor, and he doesn't not only not say thank you, he says that they did something bad to him. Just like Shlomo Melech says, what does that mean? If you come and you have a wound on the outside, it's very easy to cure it. But if it's on the inside, it's much more difficult. If it's an internal, it's much more difficult to cure. So too the same thing, when somebody comes and they're complaining, it's very difficult to come and to actually help it. So the Malbim comes and he says on Mishle, Mi shemitzlonen tamid al Hashem, somebody that always complains on Hashem, that he created him for the bad, and that all the things in the world are bad, and that he didn't give him any good. He's always going to complain against Hashem, ki'ilu, that Hashem sent him as a mikre, as if like it happened to be. So he comes and he says, it's ki'ilu Hashem is always giving him makot, and it goes down to his stomach. He comes and he says, that person, so what does he say? He says, ki'ilu Hashem never does good things with him. So he says, that in itself is the biggest sin that a person can do. So he comes and he says, Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he says, you guys are kafui tova. You guys are, I don't understand you. Hashem took you out of Egypt. He did all the miracles. He took you out. He redeemed you. He did Kriyat Yam Suf. He gave you the manna. He saved you from Amalek. He came and he gave all the Har Sinai. He comes and he gives you the Torah. And now you're going to come and say God hates you? And therefore he's going to take you out of Mitzrayim to kill you? How do you even understand this? How can we come and, how does that work? A guy does you favors all your life, and you're still going to say that he's only doing negative things to you? He's only doing bad to you? How does that? Rashi says, Vehu haya ohev etchem. He loved you. He loves you. Aval atem sanetem oto, but you guys hated him. Mashal ediot omer divil bevecha lachamach ma divil be'alach. What does that mean? Mashadam choshev al chavero, right? He says, Uma shechoshev chavero alav, meaning what you think about your friend, you say is what your friend thinks about you. Meaning sometimes it happens that you come and you say, this guy was very cold with me. And you know what it was really? You were cold with him, right? You were very cold with him. Not he was cold with you. You were cold with him. So what happens is he comes and he says that a person has to understand what's going on. The Gemara comes and it says, Vatisa kol ha'edah. This is the Gemara Masechet Ta'anit, 29a. Everyone came and they started crying. This is after the Chet of the Menaglim. Says Rabbi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that day was Erev Tisha B'Av. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you guys cried in vain for no reason. I'm going to make you cry for generations. The Marsha says, not only in the Churban and the Zman, he says the cause of the Churban was also on that night. What's the cause of the Churban? Sinat Chinam. Why? Am Yisrael, they complained against Hashem, saying, you hate us. They said to God, you hate us. Says Hashem, I hate you? What you just did is Sinat Chinam. And therefore, that's the cause of the destruction. Meaning not only on what we're supposed to do on that night, that we have to cry that night. No. The cause of the destruction was Sinat Chinam. That came because of us. Because we started crying in our tents and started saying that God, you hate us. But even after Rashi, we still have to understand what's going on exactly. Right? But how does that make sense exactly? Okay, that's what we have to understand. But let's try to understand, how does that work? How does it work that a person could come and they could go to such a low level and say, God hates us? You know what God did to you until now? He took you out of jail. He gave you food. You went out of jail with money, with riches. Kriyat Yam Suf, saved you from Amalek, gave you the Torah, gave you the man, gave you the water, gave you everything. God hates you? And now he's going to kill you? What's going on? So look what happened with the story of Manoach and his wife. Manoach, they found they had an open miracle. It says that there was a miracle, right? The malach comes up, and Manoach comes and he falls to his face and he says, "We're going to die. Yeah, we're going to die." So what happens? He comes and he says, his wife comes and he tells him, "1 second, it's not true. If Hashem wanted us to die, why is our burnt offering and grain offering, why was it accepted? And he wouldn't have showed us all these miracles. And therefore what? And therefore, obviously, you're seeing from here, God didn't want us to die, right? Because if not, what's going on exactly? Yeah, that's not that." So he comes and he says like this: this woman understood that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bringing close to them and showing them so many miracles, so that's not the kavanah to come and to kill them. It doesn't even make sense. He's bringing them up. He's elevating them. So too Bnei Israel, after seeing so many miracles, they should have said, "I don't understand. They got the 10 Commandments. They got this. They got everything. Now you're going to come and you're going to say, now he's going to come and kill you? It doesn't make sense. What are you doing?" Right? So Rav Nebenzahl comes and he says, so then what's the secret? How could we understand this? How do we understand it? How do we understand Bnei Israel? So he comes and he says like this. He says, you know what it is? He comes and he says like this. He says, when they came, right, and they're complaining, right? He says complaints of Am Yisrael is not coming from the sechel. It's not coming from the mind. It's coming from the ratzon, from the will, right? It's coming from the heart. And therefore, we don't have to see anything, but we have to actually understand. So how did it happen? So he comes and he says like this. This tofa, this signs happen many times when a person wants something. And after he already has the goal, right? There's nothing that you can move him. Because when you want something, it's not going to help, right? And he's going to say, please, don't bother me. He's got his goal. Don't bother me. So he comes and he says like this. A person that wants to be kofer b'tovat Hashem, a person by nature, sometimes they want to be ungrateful. What does that mean they want to be ungrateful? He says, imagine right now somebody does you so many favors. It's difficult to show that you owe them something. Because by nature, a person wants to feel, I owe nothing to nobody. I'm my own guy. They don't like feeling that, I don't owe anything to anybody. That's what people like feeling. So what happens? He says, really, Be'emet, he owes everything to Hashem. But if you're going to tell the guy, listen, you're going to be, he's going to feel so bad. What? I'm a kofer b'tovah. I'm an ingrate. I'm an ungrateful person. How does that work exactly? So what does he do? He convinces himself that everything that was done was not for the positive, was for the negative. And now that everything which is done is going to be for the negative, what happens? So now what happens is, I don't owe him anything. Because he didn't do anything tovah. He did only bad things to me. And that's what it means. Besinat Hashem otanu. Hashem hates us. He did this good. He didn't do us any good. We were calm in Egypt. We were eating our cucumbers and being slaves all day. We were fine in Egypt. What is he doing? Don't do me any favors. That's not a ganut. That's the concept of what? Of the complainers. A person that doesn't want to come. And therefore, it's so important for us just to remember why. Because in this period of time, we actually learn what's going on. More than that, say the rabbi is something incredible. The rabbis come and they say, right, that this naraganut is the cause of all of the Lashon Hara. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you guys to answer. What was the first sin in the world? The first averot in the world was Lashon Hara and being ungrateful. For the snake, in order for him to get Chava to eat, what did he say? He said Lashon Hara. He went and he told Chava, do you know, God, he's very happy with you. You're even greater than he is. And he's afraid of you. It's like a boss that comes and he's afraid of his own employees. You could become the boss. They're afraid of you. So what did he tell you? He says, don't eat from the Etz Hadat. Why? Because if you're going to come and eat from the Etz Hadat, you're going to become greater than him. So don't eat from the Etz Hadat, because if not, you'll become greater than God. And you'll also be able to create worlds and do everything like that. So what happened? She believed him. And she came and she ate. She gave Adam to eat. What does Adam come? HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and he says, no, Adam. What happened exactly? What does he answer? The woman that you gave me, it's her fault. Kafui tova. I gave you the woman to be an accomplice with you, to help you out. Tovim l'shnayim min ha'echad, ezel lo kenegdo, to help you in everything. To be a company, to help you with everything that you're going to do in life, to build you. And now you're going to come and you're going to tell me, it's the woman's fault? It's like, she just said all the good things for you. What's going on? That was the first sin in the world. And that was the sin of the Meraglim as well. And that's the sin of Tisha B'Av. And that's why the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, and it's still destroyed. Lashon Hara, it's still here. And Kfuyeh Tovah. The majority of the times the Lashon Hara starts because people are not grateful. Somebody comes, he gives you a job, he gives you parnasah, they help you out with something, they help you out with shidduchim, they help you out with something that you needed, they help you out. And then what do? Nah, they didn't do anything good for me. They didn't do anything good for me. Nah, they did me something bad. They made you make yourself a victim, as if everything's negative. That's called an argan. That in essence is called an argan. And therefore a person has to understand it's a way in perspective. Listen to this. Parashat Beshalach, we're talking about the Tzrunot. They started coming and complaining. What's written over there? They weren't able to drink the waters right after Kriyat Yam Suf. Why? Kimani meim. They were bitter. I'm going to ask you a question. What was bitter? What was bitter? It's the water. The water was bitter. So if the water is bitter, so then obviously they can't drink. Listen to this midrash. Midrash Tanchuma Parashat Vayakel. Amar Rabbi Levi. Says Rabbi Levi. Lama? Why? Kimani mem. Because they're bitter. Hador hayamar b'maasav. The people were bitter with their actions. Lo hamayim marim. Not the waters were bitter. Ela ha'amar. The people were bitter.
So why then they throw the wood to make it sweet? What does that make change?
One second. So therefore what happens? Says the Midrash, if a person doesn't understand, it's not something which is objective. When a person's bitter, they're always going to find complaints. They're always going to come and complain. They're going to speak lashon hara, say bad things. But when a person's good, you could give him a thorn, he's going to look at it like a flower. He's going to look at it like a hug and a kiss, as if that. And that's why even if the water itself is bitter, he's going to come and he's going to say it's sweet. Now the question is, so how do we change that? How exactly do we change that? How do you change from bitter to sweet? So the answer is we have to pick up the way that we look at things in life. We have to elevate ourselves. What do you mean we have to elevate ourselves? Right? How do you elevate ourselves? When we come and we realize, right, that what happens is, right, is that he says, how do you turn a complaint into thank you? He says, it looks like we need to look up. We elevate ourselves to see that our whole life is under the divine wheel. It's under Hashem. Everything is under precise divine supervision. Hashem is looking everything. Divine supervision on everything. The benevolent divine hand, he's caressing us. He's leading us to a safe shore. Even if sometimes we don't see it immediately, but from a high view, everything changes. And everything is for the best. What does that mean? They came and they took a bitter stick and they threw it inside of the water. I'm going to ask you something. When you make a lemonade, the lemonade is very, very bitter, right? If you want to make it sweet, what do you have to add? You have to add sugar, yeah? If I'm going to take now, instead of sugar, and I'm going to put salt, what's going to come out of the lemonade, right? It's a worse, nobody will be able to drink it. Already the lemonade was too bitter that you couldn't drink. Now you're going to drink it. What Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to show the people is I'm going to take something bitter and put it into these bitter waters, and they're going to become sweet. Why? Because it's Hashem that's doing everything. I'm going to do a miracle within another miracle. I'm going to show you that the waters in itself are not really bitter. It depends on you, on your perspective in life. And he says, right? He says this is especially true for a leader. Why? When you have anger, complaints against you, it's part of a leader. What do they have to do? It's an act, it's a fundamental quality of a leader, whether it's you're going to be of a leader of stature, whether it's going to be a manager, whether you're going to be a commander, whether he's going to be a parent, whether you're going to be an educator, anything. The talent is to allow complaints, right? And to lead the possibility of making the complaints satisfied. That's a real leadership. Meaning the leader's task is to distinguish between a real and just complaint or just steam that comes from a petulant or an unsupportive character, meaning a person that he's not a good guy. A leader has to learn to filter. You're a boss of a company. You're always going to have complaints. Sometimes it could be from a client. Sometimes it could be an employee. Sometimes it could be for anything. It could be a parent and their children start complaining. And it could be anything in life. And you will always have complainers against you. You could be part of a synagogue, whether you're part of a board, whether you're part of anything. Anywhere where you are, you will always have complainers and you will have complaints. The question is, as a leader, what you have to do is you have to start channeling and filtering. You have to actually come, and the main thing is to know how to turn the bitterness into a force of satisfaction and sweetness. So you have to start learning. Is this guy complaining because it's just, it's a real complaint and we have to try to make it sweet? Or that's just his character? That's the way that this person is. So you have to find out what's the character. You have to find out how does it happen. But everything depends upon the perspective. And our mission in all these things is we have to start filtering and start learning how to take the complaint and say, you know what, this was a valid complaint. We have to try to fix something. Or really, not. We'll see in a few minutes of how many different types of complainers there are, how many different types of complaints there are, meaning the person and the complaints themselves. We'll see it in psychology and everything as well. When we come back now, right, we actually mentioned something incredible. In everywhere we turn in life, everything has to do with proportions. Corona, right, was causing a big stir. Everyone remembers COVID. But it opened up a big school of thoughts. Why did the COVID open up a big school of thoughts? Because people were coming and they were all complaining. And they were saying, what's going on exactly, right? So you could come and you could channel everything to the negative. But really, be'emet, all of a sudden, you start changing the view. For example, people that don't have large families. So what happens? They come and they don't look at the positive of having a large family. They come and they see all the burn-ins. They come and they see, look how much you have to work, how much you have to sacrifice, how much of this, there's no room, you have to share everything, there's always going to be noise, always going to be fights, but they don't look at the bigger picture. If they would put on a proper lens, they would say, how much beracha does it bring them? How much? And by the way, you should know there was a very big change in perspective, right, in the generations. I had a grandfather that he wasn't a very religious man, right? Mama, not religious at all, basically. He was Shomer Shabbat. Yeah, that's it. You know, Shomer Shabbat, kashrut, this, that. But you should know one thing. 8 children. Yeah, other families. 8 children, 10 children, 7 children. It was normal. You didn't have to be religious to have 7 or 8 children. It wasn't something of religion, right? They come and they start making the joke. Nah, because they're religious and they have nothing what to do, so they have children. Nothing to do with anything. You know what it is? It's a bracha that they see. They understood that every child comes with a bracha. They understood that everything, when you have 8 children, you're going to have 8 simachot, 8 bar mitzvah, bat mitzvahs. You're going to have 8 weddings. You're going to have hundreds of grandchildren. You're going to have simachot and everything. You're right. If in short term, it's going to be more work. It's going to be more this, more that. But I'm going to tell you something. They enjoy. They're able to cope with people. Those children that they come with big families are able to cope with roommates, right? They're able to cope with people in general. They're able to cope with sharing. They're able to cope with everything. And then what happens? The people that they come and they have, right? Whether it's going to be, there are couples that they have a boy, a girl, and a dog, right? That's their family. Their family comprises of those 3, right? That's the family. So what happens? What happens with them, since each one had their own room, you think they could manage with dormmates, right? They go to one of these places, they kill each other. You turn on the light, turn off the light, I can do whatever I want. This is mine, I'm with this, I'm that. They come, they get married, immediate divorce. They come, why? Because they don't know what it is. And therefore they don't see the beauty of it. So they have the short lenses and they don't look at the big picture, the outer picture. So she comes and she says the same thing, right, to do with this concept of the people of Bnei Yisrael, to do with the Narganim. He comes and he says, if people are only going to look at the negative, you're right. COVID did so much positive that we don't even realize. People were able to stop with their lives and start learning who it is that their wife. People didn't even know who their wife was. People didn't even know who their children were. They were always out. They were always saying they never had time for their family. They never had their time for wife and children. And people, they miss it. Sometimes you come and you speak to children and you ask them, what do you prefer, COVID or this? Some of them will tell you, yeah, COVID. There was no school. There was no this or that. Some of them will tell you, you know why I loved COVID? We had family time. We were able to sit down and eat on the same table. We were able to speak. We were able to do all these things. And we learned how to share. And even if it is that we're in one room, there's one Zoom, another one, another Zoom, we have another 5 computers with Zooms in every single one, and we're trying to grow, but they learn how to share. They learn that no matter how small of a house, it's huge. They can have the smallest house in the world, and it's a big house. They have room for everybody. But then you come to these people that they're rich, and they have huge houses, and there's no room for nothing. You think to yourself, I don't understand, in square feet, you've got enough. You could put 100 people there. But it depends on perspective. It depends on how a person's perspective is. So now 1 second, is it that negative then to act like a misken, to act like a poor person? And the answer is yes. Personality development is very, very important. There's an oof syndrome. Oof, you do it in Hebrew all the time. It's like oh. In English, they do oh. What is it? It's an oof syndrome. Oof, right? There's no hot water anymore, right? That's like in Israel, that they have a dud shemesh. They have the sun thing, so there's no hot water anymore. Oof, I can't find my cell phone. Oof, I can't find that. They put the clothing in the laundry. Everything's oof. I have to wash dishes. I have to do that. Everything's an oof syndrome. He comes and he says, we have to actually understand that Ramban, he comes and he says, when they went from Har Sinai, they moved away from Har Sinai, it was close to the settlement and they came to the great, they had everything. They had the well, they had everything. So what are they coming? They're making themselves negative in the eyes of Hashem. They come and they start complaining. Why are you making yourself a misken? Why are you making yourself somebody so poor? He says, when you come and you're making yourself like an ingrate, you know how many favors you did? You know how many good things you received from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Right? How could that be even? So therefore, it all depends on how we're looking at things. Okay? And therefore, only when we come and we start looking things in the proper path, then we're going to be able to gain from it. Listen to this, right? Zohar HaKadosh. Listen to this Zohar. This Zohar, I hope, will change the lives of many people. The Zohar HaKadosh, Chilek Bet says, he says like this, come and see, the lower world always stands before a person, and he's called a good stone, and the upper world does not give him anything except as he stands. What does that mean? If he stands with his face enlightened, if a person comes and he stands with a face that he's always happy, from below, the same way they shine him from above. But if he stands in sadness down here below, he's given dinim, justice against him. As is written, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, serve Hashem with joy. That is, the joy attracts other joy. What does that mean? That means as follows. Every single human being, you're here in this world, and you're a magnet to the way that you are. What does it mean to the way you are? If we're here and we have a kara, the Tisha B'Av, a face, we're going to get the Tisha B'Av. But if we come and we have a good face, a smiley face, we'll get the smile in return from Hashem. Hashem is our tzel, Hashem is our shadow. Whatever we portray to Hashem, we'll get it. If we're always going to be happy, we're always going to bless Hashem, to say thank you to Hashem. We're going to change, right? Do we value that? Do we go and get up in the morning and say thank you? If we come and we always start doing those things, Hashem says, you think that that's thank you? I'm going to give you real reasons to say thank you. But if Chas Shalom, we come and we start complaining, or like they did in the desert, they started crying in vain for no reason, Hashem says, you think that you're crying for something? I'm going to really give you a reason to cry. There's a saying in Spanish, right? The same thing that, te lo voy a dar, de verdad. Like, I want to give it to you truthfully that really you're going to feel it. You think that it's like that? It's not like that. But that in essence is what a person has to understand. A person has to understand, right, that in essence, that's what's happening to him. And really, be'emet, right? When they're going to speak about all these things, there's many different type of in psychology of how they look at it, right? So first of all, right, they come and they speak about when they're talking about, this all these things. There's many different types of whiners and complainers. Listen to this. He says, quit whining and get over it. There's 4 types of complainers and how to lead them. So first of all, they come and they say there's 4 different types of complaints. Listen to this. This is in one of these websites of like psychology, of clearance jobs. He comes and he says like this. There's productive complaints. What are productives? There are times when people complain with the intent of highlighting a problem and they offer a solution, right? So that's called a productive complaint. Okay, this is valuable feedback that needs to be captured and operationalized, right? Because doing so, it incentivizes and drives needed change. So it actually is productive. That's called productive complaints. There's something which is called venting complaints. What are venting complaints? This can sometimes sound like a productive complaint, but the intent is more about releasing stress and frustration than solving a problem. Since these complaints typically focus on issues that are out of the complainer's span of control, meaning at the end of the day, you can't solve it. So what are you complaining about? So it sounds productive, but really, be'emet, it's just to relieve stress, and that's it. There's nothing else. Third one is chronic complaints. There's someone in every organization that will never be happy. They will raise complaints so often and so vociferously, and they sap the energy from those around them. Chronic complaints, like the people who present them, are intended only to draw attention to the complainer. That's the only reason, to draw attention. That's called chronic complaints. The last one is malicious complaints. Malicious complaints, of all the types of complaints, these are the most damaging. The intent behind the malicious complaints is purely destructive, to gain an advantage by undermining others. These complaints are often disguised as workplace gossip and are more commonly referred to as backstabbing. So those are 4 different types of complaints. Now let's go to the complainers, the people. A similar spectrum of the people that are complainers. And let's try to understand. He says aggressive complainers. Aggressive complainers are extroverts who are also controlling, pragmatic, and decisive. They use their emotions to gain and to hold control and be extremely difficult to deal with. Cut right to the chase with an aggressive complainer and don't give them the time and space to drag it out any longer than they have to. Meaning that since these guys they're making the show, cut it. You're not going to gain anything if you're going to take longer. The more that it takes, the worse that it is. Expressive complainers. Expressive complainers are also extroverts, but they are more social by nature. With an expressive complainer, you can spend more time engaging them in dialogue, explaining the bigger picture. However, their nature may lead them to take their complaints to social media, airing their grievances in a public space. This may compel you to respond to them in a similar fashion, or at least acknowledge them in a way that leads to a more productive and less public discourse. Third one is passive complainers. Passive complainers can be the most destructive complainers of all. Because they are introverts, they tend to be indirectly confrontational, meaning they will direct their complaints everyone but you. They're going to complain to everybody, but just not to you. In the process, they sow discontent, unlike any other complainer, and because you are largely unaware of the complaints, you're unlikely to take any direct action to resolve them. So this is one of the most dangerous. Because if you already know you have a troublemaker, you already know who he is. You know who your Datan Vaviram are. You know who your troublemakers are. But you don't know who your backstabbers are. That's the problem. You don't know who the guy is there that's going to backstab. That's the biggest danger. The last one, as he says, is constructive complainers. These tend to be deeply introspective, a trait that derives from their natural intervention. They are organized and critical, but they are invaluable to an organization because they present productive feedback that can be acted upon decisively. You might just have to spend more time with them to tease out those complaints. So the opposite, you want them to complain. You want a constructive criticizer, a constructive complainer to come and to give you those complaints. but they're all constructive. They're all going to build. Now, these are just the 4 different types of complaints, the 4 different types of complainers. But what is this called nowadays? And basically what it is it's called the grass is greener syndrome.
On the other side.
The grass is always greener on the other side, or the grass is greener syndrome. It's called a syndrome. What does that mean exactly? How many times do we hear the cliche, the grass is always greener on the other side? It's actually a question mark, by the way. It's not a statement. It's a question mark. Well, the grass is greener on the other side. Well, he comes and he says, even though people have used it so much, people who experience the grass and greener syndrome, right, endure a significant struggle with the commitment, right? But really, be'emet, it should actually be the opposite, right? So now, why exactly? So he comes and he says the cliche should be changed to the grass is only as green as we keep it. What does that mean? Meaning we get the grass when it's all nice and shiny green. But then it begins to wear, right? With time, so what do you have to do? You have to start investing in it. And you have to start putting everything in it in order to come and to make sure that it stays healthy. That's the explanation, is that you have to actually keep the grass as green as we keep it. We are the ones in charge of that grass. Every single human being got the grass. Do you think that it's going to be greener on the other side? So they come and they say, right, that there's a whole bunch of different things about, they actually even brought it down, right, to do with different, like Buddhists, right, and other things as well, right? They come and they say that, is it good or is it not good? It's a syndrome. And the syndrome is that people don't actually understand that in essence, right, it's the exact opposite. Why? Because it's not greener on the other side. We think it's greener on the other side. Many times it happens because of conviction, people are regret, or reality, or people are afraid to commit, right? It says here, what causes the grass is green syndrome? He says, usually it's because avoidance, low self-esteem, stress, your loss, fear of commitment, right? A person doesn't want to get married. Why? Grass is green. I can find probably somebody better than her. It's commitment. It's fear of commitment, decision-making, loss of passion, emotional work, right? Somebody went and they were coming in psychology and they say, people, they come and they get married, afterwards they get divorced very quickly. Why? Because they thought that life is always like a honeymoon. So that she went, lady, she comes, a psychologist, she says, people are misunderstanding, right, what is love and what is lust. Because they don't realize, they think that it's always going to be like that. It's not true. Now, according to what we explained in the shiur, everything makes sense. When you're going to have this person that he's only going to be a complainer, you already know by a fact that they are kufuye tova. Remember, I always bring down, and this is what I spoke about at the wedding, if you remember, of Goldie. Rav Wolbe always says there's no such thing as shalom bayit. You know why there's no such thing as shalom bayit? Everything is hakarat tov. If you have somebody that became your partner and they've invested everything in you, whether it's to make you food, your clothing, to take care of you, to be when you're sad, when you're down, to cheer you up, when you're happy, to be along with you, to go out with you, to enjoy, to benefit, to this, to that. They're your life partner. How can a person dare come and throw them out like a pair of shoes? How can a person have the audacity to come and say, it just doesn't work? It doesn't work. It means that you don't want to commit. It means that you don't want to come and invest. It means that you're kafui tova. You don't appreciate anything that they do for you. That's what it means. Because when a person is kafui tova and they don't appreciate, there's nothing what to do. They'll complain about everything. And then you're going to say, yeah, but look how many good things they do. What? Good? That's bad. Look what they did. That is the narganim. That's the lashon hara. That's where the sin of sinat chinam came from. We said to God, you hated us. How do we have the audacity to say that God hates us? God created us from nothing, from semen and from an embryo, from everything. And he comes, he gave us health, life, breath, a heart, everything, children, wedding. God hates us. And therefore we make ourselves a miskenim. We come, no, look, God is just giving me one after another and this and that and that. So that's called the grass is green on the other side. The grass is green syndrome. We are looking for something that we think is going to be better. And really, be'emet, it's not. But it's just to appease ourselves. And a person will actually realize that they'll never get there, right? They will never actually come and they'll never get there. Why? Because it just doesn't exist, right? It just does not exist. So there's many different reasons why this happens. And there's many, different types of also, how do you call this, of different, quotes and everything. But I just think that it's so important just for us to understand that at the end of the day, right, it's the most important for us to realize that whatever Hashem has given us is a blessing. Sometimes we don't see it because we're not on top of the hill. Mi'ale behar Hashem. When you go up to the mountain of Hashem, then you start seeing things that people don't see. You start appreciating things that you've never been able to see. When you're on top of the hill and you see everything, you say, wow, look over there, there's a valley, and there's another mountain, and look how they're doing this, and look what's going on. But that's only if you pick yourself up and you elevate yourself in order to see it. The biggest sin that we have to remember during this time of Tisha B'Av is the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash already started from Sinat Chinam, already started here. Meaning it wasn't that the spies came and they cried for nothing, and therefore Hashem says, you know what, I'm going to give you a reason to cry every single Tisha B'Av. And then what was the reason? So it was Sinat Chinam during the destruction of Bet HaMikdash. No, Sinat Chinam started now with the sin of the spies. Already by the sin of the spies, because when they went and they said, my friend hates me, it's because they hate their friend. So automatically, if they hate their friend hates them. And many times, if you all of a sudden you come and you give your friend a present, they're nice to you and you're saying, hey, what's going on over here? Something's wrong. What's going on? Because they only were portraying what's in their own heart. But that has to do with them. So the Sinat Chinam already started by them. It already started here. And therefore, what we have to fix this Tisha B'Av is start loving, appreciating, stop the complaining, right? Why? Because these are all the things of the Lashon Ra. These are all the things of the complaining, of not being appreciative. If we would just be a little bit appreciative, how can we come and complain? They did so many favors to us. We're going to come and we're going to start complaining. How does that work? But that's the problem. We don't appreciate. Bezrat Hashem, I just hope that we're able to internalize this message, this Tisha B'Av, in order to continue growing in Torah Nirat Shamayim, that will stop the Lashon Hara between us. We'll start appreciating what everybody does between us. We'll start loving each other. Bezrat Hashem, that way we'll be able to build the Bet HaMikdash HaShlishi B'Mirav Yameinu. Amen.